As a preliminary matter, this is Woody Knight, Chair of the Newbury Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members of persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Pecos,
Yes, sir.
Larry Murphy,
Yes.
Scott Kinter, I believe he's going to be joining us. Steve Mangian
Yes.
and Mary Stone isn't with us this evening. Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kristen Grubbs, Planning Director.
Yes.
Martha Taylor, Special Projects
Yes.
Planner.
Yes.
And Sadie Woodward, Assistant Planner. Hello, everyone. Good evening. The January 21st, 2026 open meeting of the Newbury Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, which extends the Governor's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A 20, until June 30th, 2027. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convening by video conference via Zoom, as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found at the town's website. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and entering meeting ID number 832-714-1356, passcode 108790, or by calling in 1-929-205-6099 US and entering the meeting ID number and passcode when prompted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference and/or telephone conference. The meeting is also being broadcast live through local access cable channel 9 on Zoom and at newburytv.wixsite.com/tnctv. And the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Excuse me. Meeting business ground rules. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. As chair, I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. For all attendees, please remember to mute your audio when you are not speaking. On Zoom, the mute button, use the mute button. And if you're calling in, use *6 to toggle to mute and unmute. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during the public hearing. I will seek questions and comments from members of the public through the Zoom raise hand function. Video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the image of the hand that appears. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. Telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone keypad. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address, and then may ask questions or make a comment. Please do your best to keep your comments at 3 minutes or less. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. I will afford the applicants or their representatives the opportunity to reply. Should there be a written submittal of questions or concerns, they will be noted for the record. The applicant will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So that's the introduction. First item on the agenda this evening, we have a submission for Michael Becker, 15 Central Street, Byfield, LLC, for a 2-lot definitive subdivision application at 15 Central Street. Assessors map U1 lot 53. Do we have Mr. Becker here?
Good evening.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Woody.
Uh,
I'm here this evening with my partner
Mhm.
and co-owner of the property, Carissa Vitas. I'd first like to thank Sadie and Kristen for all their help in getting the submission up to snuff over the last few weeks and months. I can go into the nuts and bolts of the plan if we're ready to do that.
Sure, yeah. Present what you've got proposed.
So the proposal is to create one new conforming duplex lot and keep the existing historic home and restore that. Both lots will be of conforming size. We've had the soils tested for both the drainage and the proposed septic, and soil conditions are ideal for septic. We plan to have town water for both properties, both properties. We have presented the plan for the road to the fire department, and they accepted that length road for this size subdevelopment. We've plotted all the existing trees, and as you know, we had the site walk during the preliminary subdivision plan. I believe we have met all the qualifications for the application. That's pretty much it.
Okay. We have to vote to accept this application, correct, Kristen?
Yes.
All
And
right.
Mike, or Teresa, it looks like she has her hand up. Do you want to add anything?
Oh, yep. Go ahead. And you're muted.
Hi, am I on?
Yes, you are. We can
Oh,
hear
I'm sorry. Hi, thank you.
Did you want to make a comment? I wasn't sure if that was why you raised your hand.
you.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
just
muted.
Mike's partner on the project, so I wanted to let the panel know, hi, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do any board members have any questions at this time? All right. Here none, I would entertain a motion to accept the subdivision plan.
So move.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Kristen.
just, accept the submission and then you can have another vote to set the public hearing date. Sorry.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Pete. Roll call vote, Peter Pecos,
Yes, sir.
Larry Murphy, Scott Kenter isn't with us yet. Steve
I think
Mangian?
he just hopped on, so I don't know, Scott, if you're still driving or if you're available to tune in.
If he heard the submission.
Right.
Steve Mangian,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right. Now we'll have I did entertain a motion to set the date for public hearing. Do we have a date for the public hearing, Kristen?
I mean, it's up to the planning board, but I think it would be a sufficient time for staff to help the applicant with the legal notice and abutter notices, if you set the date at the second meeting in February.
Okay.
Which would be February 18th.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to set the public hearing for 15 Central Street LLC, Byfield LLC, 2-lot definitive subdivision for February 16th, you said, Kristen?
18th.
February 18th, 2026. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved at 7:15, sir.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote, Peter Pecos?
Yes.
Larry Murphy?
Yes.
Steve Mangian?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, thank you, Mike, and we'll see you on the 18th at
Great,
7:15.
thank you. See you on the 18th.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Yep, have a good night.
Next item on the agenda. Liaison and meeting reports. We'll start with ZBA.
Thank you, Woody. The ZBA met last Thursday night. They had public hearings on the agenda for 7 Exeter Way and 25 Harvard Way to modify the structures, the homes on those properties. Also on the agenda was the Sunset Club Pavilion, but I think where that's on for 7:15 public hearing, we'll just defer any discussion till then.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
that's
Larry.
all. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Larry. Conservation Commission, we met last night. We ended up having a light agenda. I don't believe there's anything on there last night that pertained to us. We had some docks and we have some more dock approvals on the Parker River, at the Parker River Bridge at the Old Furnace. But other than that, sidewalk tomorrow, but other than that, we don't have anything that pertained to us. MVPC, Kristen?
The MVPC commissioners meeting was last week. It was on Zoom. They usually hold their meetings in person, but they sometimes don't have a meeting in January, so everyone was on Zoom. So it was really the primary agenda was updates from all the different departments. Couple of highlights, the housing and community economic development program announced that every town in the region now has an active and approved housing production plan. So MVPC has been, providing technical assistance. Newbury approved our HPP 2 years ago now. So we're in our first year of implementation. Those are 5-year plans. So that's a lot of work that MVPC has been helping towns with, focused on housing. They also have some really interesting grants that have come in to support economic development. They have some technical assistance and small grant initiatives for women and minority-owned businesses in the region. So these are technical services available to any business across the entire MVPC region. They have a arts and culture program that I'm not sure I've ever shared, but they have a part-time staff person who's focused on sort of bringing public arts into public spaces. Right now she's working on public art on bus stops and coordinating with the MEVA Transit Authority, which is kind of cool. And then they've also gotten some new grants to support their environmental program. They've started their Stormwater Collaborative up again, which is a quarterly partnership collaborative among all the towns where they invite DPW directors and planners and conservation, anyone involved in stormwater management and environmental sort of infrastructure projects to come together, and they're getting some good grant funding to support that work as well. And then the MVPC Planners Regional Meeting is next week. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Kristen.
Yep.
Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Was that Scott?
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, Scott. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, Woody.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on the meeting minutes?
Actually, I have a question for Sadie.
Yep.
Just the substance looks fine. Sadie, you always include a link to the meeting to the video, and the draft I have doesn't have that. I don't know, was that left off for a particular reason, or is it just an oversight?
Might have been just an error. But sometimes when I do the minutes, the video hasn't been uploaded. Maybe that's why, but I imagine it was just I forgot to paste it in
Yeah,
there.
I would. Yeah, I mean, they look fine. Substance is all there, but you're always very good about putting that in. So I would with that suggestion that be added, that looks fine to me.
Okay. Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Sadie. I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for, I'm looking for a date for the meeting minutes.
January 7th.
Yes, January 7th, 2026, with the amendment to add the link for the video.
So moved.
Thank you, Larry. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Roll call vote, Peter Pecos?
Yes.
Larry Murphy?
Yes.
Steve Mangian?
Yes.
Scott Kenter?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that's the meeting minutes, and thank you for doing those, Sadie. Next item on the agenda, public hearing, 2-8 Old Point Road, Level 2 site plan review. Application for as-built constructed changes to an approved site plan of record for proposed new 40 by 40 pavilion structure at the Sunset Club at 2-8 Old Point Road. Assessors map U02-0-153A. Owner the Cottages Commercial LLC. Vincent Godin, manager. I'd like to welcome Vincent Godin and/or Steve Sawyer. Yeah, I believe both of you will be here. Steve Sawyer's from Millennium Engineering. And if you would please, you have the floor.
All right.
Update us on your permitting
Yeah.
activities, please.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Unfortunately, something's gone on with my laptop video, so turn it on, but can't see me.
Okay.
And Vincent's here also. So it's been a while. I think it was back in July. We ran through most of the site issue. I think all of the site issues. We did get a clean letter from Joe Swarka, the peer review, saying all the stormwater issues were addressed with the latest design and calculations. But Kristen noticed that as part of the zoning approval, all walls were, all the sides were to remain open. So we went back to get a modification from the Zoning Board of Appeals. It took some time, and I believe Vincent was there he was in person last week. He can fill in on the deliberations, but from that it was approved. The gable ends, those gable ends of the building were approved to provide 1-inch gaps between it's sort of a batten type end with gaps between, so it's somewhat open on either end of the gable end. We have some graphics to show that was presented to the ZBA if you'd like to see them.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Well, let's see, share. All right. So, basically what it is, there'll be boards with a gap in between, 1-inch gap on each gable end. Was a resolution of what the ZBA agreed upon as far as how to handle these triangular ends of each end of the pavilion. And so that's the structure itself.
Steve, one other thing
Yep.
to point out, while
Yep.
there's a 1 inch gap between the top of one board and the bottom of the next, they're in a louvered position. So
Yep.
they're at an angle on top of each other. So there's more of a open feel than just that 1 inch gap. As you approach it more and more of the inside of it becomes visible as you're looking up through the louvers. So that provided that open feel that the board had the ZBA was looking for, while still providing the rain protection and the sun protection that we needed for it to be functional.
All right, thank you, Vincent.
And then so as we updated the renderings, Photoshop renderings of the pavilion entering the property as you see driving onto the island, the appearance of it, and then leaving. Granted, this actually leaving, you'd be in the right-hand lane. This is looking across, so you'd be in the right-hand lane. So it wouldn't be as, you probably would, it would be a little bit screened and not centered as you leave the island. So, that was, I think, from our recollection, that was the final item on the site plan review portion of the project. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I think I'd open up to the, turn it over to the board to see where we're at, and hopefully
Okay, thank you.
can get this moving and approved.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
I'll start with Peter. Do you have any questions for Steve or Vincent?
Steve and Vince, thanks for coming back. It has been a while to get back to this. So I'll start off. So just so I historically remember correctly, the reason for using the pavilion, so that during rainy events, rainy or sunny episodes, that's when tables would be brought in, and that's when the space would be used. Is that right?
Vince,
Yeah,
you're muted.
Sorry about that. I had myself on mute. Yeah, it is not to add any sort of additional seating, just moving and having the ability to relocate around some of the tables and chairs in those circumstances on a hot day or if it's going to be raining, be able to locate people under there.
Okay, so we'll be moving already existing tables and chairs in and out. Okay,
Correct.
That's the first question. The second point is, now, did you want to do lighting with this in here?
Yes, there had been a lighting plan submitted back in April when we initially had submitted this, and I'm trying to see if I can find it right now.
I'm looking for it also.
So this is a photometric plan? Because I don't remember that.
I don't, as far as photometric, it's all directed. It's either uplighting under the structure or down. There's some downlighting within the structure. So there's nothing, it would all be underneath the structure. I can find, I don't believe there's we didn't provide a photometric, but it was all internal to the roof directing down on the ground. Or okay. There was some lighting on the rafters that I think directed up into on the beams that directed up into the rafters. Is that correct, Vincent?
That is correct. And same company that we used on the last go around, where everything's going to be dark sky compliant, kind of downlit, very soft lighting. We're looking more just for a light glow than anything else.
So is the intention to have the lighting on all the time?
As far as it's going to be on the same timer system that turns on and off with the rest of the restaurant.
Okay, so right now we have the string lights that are all out there, they're on all the time, and then the lights on the posts that are on all the time, and so now this lighting will be on all the time.
It's going to be on the same timer system. I believe they turn off, or they're supposed to turn off. That gets messed up sometimes with storms around 11 o'clock, which I believe is the time that is required.
Okay, so now we're going to have something with open slats, so there'll be lighting projecting outward. It just won't be contained downward, right? Because there's going to be uplighting. Do I understand that right?
Correct. Yes, there'll be some glow lighting. Yes.
So then that lighting will be going outside of the building. So as you're driving up or down the turnpike, you'll be seeing lighting of the roof.
You will see very little from that distance driving away because of the way the louvers work. As you drive and get closer and closer and get more under it, you will see more of that glow. But from far away, it compared to the light up sign that is right next to it, that is much brighter, you won't even be able to tell.
So you'll see where I'm going with this, Vincent, because if this is supposed to be used for like rain and hot sunny days, I don't understand why there'd be lighting on all the time. And if there is going to be lighting on all the time, I'd like to know what that looks like. So everybody else, because right now there's a lot of lighting on that corner. And I'm going to pull the nature card here. We have one of the largest wildlife fly paths with Plum Island, which is this wildlife management area. And we're trying to diminish lighting, not enhance lighting. So if there's going to be lighting on, I'd like an explanation as to its purpose if this is only going to be used for rain or hot days. That's the intention of the pavilion, from my understanding.
That was the purpose of having it there, yes. But
Okay.
it's still an area where people can walk over to or utilize. So we can't have it be a dark area.
So if people are going to walk
just for
over there and
safety.
if people are going to walk over there and utilize it, they'll be pulling chairs over there and tables, unless your staff tells them not to, right?
No, I mean, people have the ability to walk around the site there's kids running around at all times. I mean,
Got it.
if somebody wants to sit under there, we'll move a table there accordingly.
Okay,
So-
got it. So let's then get a better handle on lighting and what it's going to look like, because
Mhm.
I'm disturbed. I'm disturbed every time I go down there, Vincent, and I see the string lights on. They're on right now. The business isn't functional, right? The post lights are on. What was originally proposed to this board a long time ago is different than where we're at now. And I understand that business plans change. I get it. But if the business isn't open, I don't understand why there's lighting going on. And so now we're going to have another structure with lighting going on. And potentially this time next year, that structure will also be illuminated. So make me feel more comfortable, please.
Well, I believe the rules are that lighting has to be off by 11 o'clock or when a business ends up closing.
But
Now,
your business isn't open right now. Right now, it's not open. Lights are on. Your
And that
exterior
is
lighting's on.
then that is a scheduling issue on that needs to be addressed.
It's been over a year. It's been going on since you've been there. And so we're
Okay.
talking lighting. Let's get it ironed out now tonight. And if we
100%.
can't, we can come back
We
and
have every intention of following the code on lighting, and if there's any issues with that, obviously we need to address that. But it's that the actual additional lighting during the hours of operation that we will be there will not be visible in comparison to what is there.
And also the street light on the corner in front of the pavilion, as far as photometrics, would be brighter than anything underneath the pavilion. But I do understand, Peter, what you're saying is during non-operational hours, those lights should be off. We understand that. And
so
it needs
Steve,
to be, yeah.
help me get comfortable with it.
Okay. Well, we didn't, as far as running a photometric for the lights within the pavilion, we have not done that. But I can, just from looking, understanding from an engineering perspective and understanding how projects are, looking at a street light, understanding a street light and the spill from the street light is much brighter than the very soft lighting within that pavilion.
Right. So I'm
Especially dark sky compliant lighting.
Yeah.
Yes.
For now, I'd just like to hear what other planning board members have to say. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Pete. Larry Murphy, do you have any
Just-
comments or questions?
Just to summarize what happened with the ZBA is they did approve in closing the gable ends with the louvers as described. They approved that as a minor modification to the special permit. And the chair was actually going to prepare a letter. I don't know if it's been prepared. I haven't seen it, but just outlining the requirements, the size of the louvers, et cetera, that's been discussed. So any decision we make might want to take that into consideration. But Kristen, have you seen anything like that yet?
No, I haven't received a letter yet.
Okay, but there's supposed to be something, again, summarizing what the ZBA has approved for the gable ends. Just as a refresher, when this was originally proposed, the gables were oriented north to south, and the ZBA didn't like that. And so the final decision was to turn them and orient the gables east to west. But apparently it's been a while now, so I don't recall exactly what the discussion was. But apparently the issue of keeping the gable ends open or closed was not addressed in the decision, which is what brought them back to the ZBA. And then there was no discussion, to my memory, about lighting one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Scott Kenter, do you have any questions or comments?
Just that I do agree with Pete and his concern, with the I guess the timing of the lights and them being operational. I'm not a frequent visitor to the island, but I would think that if an establishment is closed, that the lights would be off. So I do have just a little bit of some concern over that. And I also do agree with Pete that if it is an issue, this has been going on. You guys have been before us a number of times for a very long time. That we ultimately can get to an agreement on something, and if it's a scheduling issue, on the lights, that we come to an agreement on. Are they going to be on? Are they going to be off? Etc. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott. Steve Manchin, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple comments. I'm pretty much where Pete is and what he described. I'd be interested in seeing some sort of visualization about what the light leakage is through the louvers. I understand how the light will change as you approach the structure and leave it because of the angle of the louvers, but I would like to see some representation of what you might see from afar as a lit up structure. Because the louvers are certainly a new wrinkle in the proposal. As an aside, I also want to go back with one question for Steve Sawyer about the drainage, but we can get to that later if you like.
Go ahead now, Steve, if you don't mind.
Okay, when I read the back and forth letters about drainage, the one thing that popped out at me, which I didn't see being fully resolved, was how drainage from the site was going to be going to the catch basin on Plum Island Boulevard. And maybe I missed it or didn't understand some of the engineering language, but it seemed to me that that was never really discussed, and it was something that Joe noted, but wasn't discussed by the applicant.
I believe so. In that the last submission, I indicated the capture area that would be picked up by. There is a portion of the apron that does go out to the catch basin in Plum Island Boulevard, but that was always the case during the original approval. So to mitigate what happened was it was running around. A portion of the parking lot would hit the island and run out to the run around the island and out onto the street. And what we're proposing or what we're planning and will be installing is a stone ribbon against that to pick it up and direct it to the rain garden. So with that, it was captured and directed to the rain garden. And with Joe Swarka's last review letter, he said that the updated plans and calculation addressed his concerns on that. What is it? I believe it's the July 22nd final response from Joe.
Right, and yours was a couple days thereafter, I think, or
No, I had submitted mine prior to that, and he
Okay.
responded. Yeah.
right. Well, I'll go back and take another look at it just for my own better understanding, or maybe ask Joe myself, because it seemed to me that at the end of the day, some runoff was still going to end up being directed to the catch basin.
Yeah, and to understand, this is a redevelopment project. It's existing pavement, and it is far reduced from what it was when it was a gas station. It was all part of the original calculations, and is part of the review by Joe.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I'll say thanks, and I'll do some more checking on it. And again, the concerns about the lighting are pretty much as Peter expressed.
Well, I have the lighting plan that was submitted prior, if we want to look at it, but there's no photometric involved with it. And what I can say is that the light the light from the street light at the site is far brighter than any light within this structure.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I'm thinking this is now, shall we say, a new source, and some visualization representation would be useful for me to see, at least.
Okay.
Do you have anything else, Steve, to mention?
Not on lighting.
Okay. Speak up if you do in the near future here.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of other issues, Woody, but I thought we'd wait and go around the table once, then I might come back in with some others.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I agree with the lighting. I think what I'm hearing from the board, and what I would suggest is submitting a photometric lighting plan. I understand how the luas work. They will block the outcast of light, but it would be nice to see and have a visual with a photometric plan. I understand that they're all under 3K dark star compliant, but it would be nice to see something. So if you could submit something for that, that would be great, Steve Sawyer.
We'll have I believe the lighting supplier, usually they can provide that fairly readily.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, if the business isn't open and the place is lit up like it's open, I find that problematic. Maybe if it would be nice if you had a plan for when the lights are going to be on and when they're not going to be on. I understand it's a business. I understand you need some lighting for security. So if you could have some sort of a plan with what's going to be on when you're not open, and what's going to be on when you're open, that would be better for the board to understand and feel comfortable with what's going on with your lighting situation. And I'll leave it at that for a moment. If no one else on the board has any immediate questions, I'll see if we have any raised hands from the public.
So, hey, Woody,
Yes, go right ahead, Pete.
I just want to circle back so that we looks like we're looking for a lighting schedule for when the business is actually open, and a lighting schedule for when the business is closed. And since we're talking about lighting, I would envision this would be the entire site, because we've been mentioning dark sky compliant in this conversation, but the rest of the site, of course, is not dark sky compliant. So I'm kind of leaning into that now since we're talking about lighting. And then I wonder, does it make sense just to have down lighting in this pavilion structure rather than up lighting? Because you're going to be wanting the ground to be lit. And other than aesthetics of creating lighting coming from out from the structure, I don't understand the safety value of uplighting. Again, we're we're giving all considerations here to what's going to spill out. And I understand the street light. I got the street light. It's there. But if we all went down there right now to this corner, you see a lot of light. And we're going to be introducing more light. So I'm looking for mitigation. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete.
And
You have your hand raised, Steve? Andrew?
yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
One other thing I want to note is that in the original approval of findings, the finding was that the proposed building and site improvements will not obstruct scenic views from publicly accessible locations. And from my perspective, I've spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, but enough time on Sunset and the Plum Island Boulevard, looking down towards the proposed structure. And to me, the proposed structure will indeed obstruct scenic views of the marsh and the like as you're driving down Plum Island Boulevard. And that in general is a concern because that corner is one where you do get a lot of scenic views of the marsh and looking upriver towards Newburyport. So I want to voice that as something that seems to contradict the original findings in the approval. I think that was number F or something like that. And in looking at the proposal, I'm concerned about that obstruction of scenic views. And I want to put that on the table. And I think that lighting concerns will only augment that concern that I've heard about.
Steve, this is Vincent here. I can address at least that one concern that you just wrote. That design, the criteria that you're discussing is one of the 13 criteria that the planning board is supposed to use in just making any sort of determination. And number F is minimize obstruction of scenic views from publicly accessible locations. So that's just one of those criteria. And I think, at least in this case, we've gone as much as we can to go and do that by keeping it completely open to minimize any sort of obstruction from anybody driving or walking along the sidewalks or anywhere near there, to still be able to have that view through the pavilion and see across to the marsh into the river. So as far as the criteria, as far as minimizing any sort of obstructions, I feel like we've gone as far as we can to try and avoid obstructing any sort of views for pedestrians or vehicle traffic going through that area.
Right. Some of my perspective comes from, say, being at the parking lot at Plum Island Center and looking towards Newburyport. And what I envision seeing is the roof. I mean, I appreciate that you've got an open structure that you can see through beneath the roof, but for what I've seen, I'm going to be looking at roof obstructing the marsh and looking upriver towards Newburyport.
I would imagine those, at least from the beach, you'll be seeing the roofs of the adjacent properties obstructing before you would see that particular roof obstructing. But I mean, we've done everything we can to try and minimize that.
Okay. My concern remains. So.
No, I understand. I just wanted to address that it was something that we did consider, obviously.
Steve, if I can share my screen, I can share a view from the parking lot looking out, and you wouldn't even see the pavilion would be tucked behind the buildings. You wouldn't even see it. You would not obstruct the view whatsoever from the parking lot. The parking lot down in the town lot down there.
If you have that ready to go, share it so the board can get a perspective, please, Steve.
Can we see this?
Yes,
Yep.
I can.
Yeah, so this is basically at the lot looking down Plum Island. You basically just pick up the sign here. The pavilion would be tucked behind.
Right. I think when I've done it, I've been a little bit further south in the parking lot, taking in the view from that perspective. Or for that matter, imagining walking down past Surfland on that side of the street. And I always use the sign as my point of reference in terms of height and that sort of thing.
All right. So even here, the pavilion, so this is on the other side of the street.
Right.
You probably have a little piece of the pavilion right here. It'd be de minimis as far as changing the view, walking, and then as you walk down towards the old Plum Island Grill, you'd be looking. But then at that point, if you're walking, you could see underneath the roof structure, sort of look through, and I think we've done a good job here to minimize the impact as far as any view, walking down the street or from cars driving on and off the island.
All right. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Steve. Do you have anything else, Steve, mentioned right now?
That's all for now. Yes.
Okay. Do we have any raised hands from the public, Kristen or Sadie? Do you see any?
We do. Jeff Christensen.
Hi, Jeff Christensen, 4 McLeod Ave. I live in the house adjacent to the restaurant, and I'm also one of the owners of the property and restaurant. I just wanted to comment on the lighting. I'm looking out my window now, and I can see that it's just the parking lot lights are on right now. The system I know is zoned for different areas of the property, and from what I can see, it's just the parking lot that has the lights illuminated. And I think that's a responsible idea, just because I can't tell you how many people I see cut through there every day through the property. And I think at nighttime, it would be irresponsible not to have the parking lot at least somewhat illuminated. Just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, any other hands? Raised hands at this time?
I don't see any right now.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the planning board? Staff, do you have any questions or comments? Kristen, Sadie, or Martha? We have Martha here too.
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Would the planning board like to review the site plan review decision criteria? Is that something we want to do now, or do we want to wait for photometric plan? Kind of poll on the board.
Woody, I'll kick it off. I'm not happy with the lighting until I get more information. I understand what Jeff just said, but I'm down there a lot, and that place is lit up a lot. So let's get a handle. Let's come back with a schedule. Let's come back with how it's going to operate, when it's going to operate. Let's talk about whether or not we need uplighting or we just want downlighting on the structure. And I haven't heard any of those answered, and they probably can't be answered right now. So I'm going to say, let's get those questions worked out, and let's get a nice schedule to staff and circulate it and see where we're at.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. And I have to agree with you there. I just wanted to pull the board. Larry, how do you feel about this?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. All right. And Scott and Steve, the same?
Yes.
Yeah, I concur.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. All right.
Right.
I-
So it sounds like on our table here is, so we need
Yep.
a concise a concise plan of the lighting schedule in the property, when they'll be on, when they'll be off, and something in some manner that that holds the establishment responsible for maintaining those hours. That's criteria one.
Yeah,
Correct.
and
And then,
yes, in when you're open and when you're not open, if there's a
yeah,
different schedule for the lighting.
yeah, yeah. And then also it may be difficult unless we can come up with a photometric for the up lighting. We'd probably just we wouldn't even provide that and just go with the down lighting, which is easy to ascertain that it's basically directed down in the sand and on the tables. But we'll talk to the lighting supplier and get a photometric from them for those lights.
Okay.
That's
Is
great,
this-
Steve. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve.
I
Is
don't.
this something?
I did see Vincent had his hand raised. Vincent, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to follow up a little bit on what you were saying. I think when the original lighting plan was done was when we were anticipating that the gables were going to be completely closed in, which would have kept all the light trapped in there, all the uplighting. And so when we went back to ZBA and they did change it and want it to have a more open feel to it, I completely understand that changes the uplighting and would create a little bit more of that I guess light pollution out that could easily be resolved by removing that. Now that there's going to be some openness to those gables, as well as the just getting back to the lighting. I think that the schedule of it is something that is supposed to be on some sort of timer system, but I think that's kind of just. This is our first season actually being closed for an extended period of time in the off season. And so I think that's something that probably just fell through the cracks there, but we'll certainly come back with a full schedule that outlines exactly which areas will be lit at which hours and which times, depending on when we're open and close, so that we can kind of solidify that.
Okay, thank you, Vincent, and that would be much appreciated by the board. Is this something that you guys can have in for next Wednesday so that make the agenda for the 4th, or would you like to have this public hearing continue to the 18th?
We should be able to get this by the end of the week to you.
Okay. Steve, you have a question?
Yeah, two-parter. One, with Kristen's help, I'll probably try and have a conversation with Joe Swartka just so I have a better understanding about the runoff. Since I'm going to ask, I wanted you to know that I would be trying to talk to Joe. The other thing in the back of my mind is when go back to the original approval, it was for a restaurant and not a merchandise shack as well. I understand that the merch shack can be an ancillary operation where you're selling Sunset Club material, but I'm inquiring whether that's the only stuff that you're selling as opposed to merchandise that isn't related to the Sunset Club itself.
We have not and have never planned to sell anything else but Sunset Club merchandise. I mean, I also have a shop across the street that sells all kinds of other Plum Island related things, so I really would not want them selling anything else besides things that say Sunset Club on it and that directly are merchandise related to the restaurant. And just to give a sense, it's really a very ancillary. Gosh, at 5% max of the sales, not even our merchandise. It's just something that takes a lot of space, and is something that the customers have asked for.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that it's not Alice's restaurant, but you can get just about anything you want by going to the cottage. So just checking in with the merchandise shack itself. Thank you.
Yep, and when it comes to merchandise, if you're on the island for the week, it's nice to go home with a souvenir from the club. So I understand that as well. So I'd entertain a motion, unless anyone else has anything to say, speak up, please. I'd entertain a motion to continue this public hearing for the Cottages LLC at Sunset Club at 2-8 Old Point Road to February 4th at 7:15.
You have it. So
Thank you,
moved.
Larry. Was that a second, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote. Peter Pecos,
Yes, sir.
Larry Murphy,
Yes.
Scott Kinter,
Yes.
Steve Mangian,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Steve Sawyer.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
All right. Turn back to the agenda. The next item I see on the agenda is old business, potential zoning amendments for the annual town meeting, 2026. Martha Taylor, Special Projects Planner. Welcome. You have the floor.
Hi. Actually, I think we're going to start the discussion with inclusionary zoning, which
Okay.
Kristen was going to handle, and then we'll get into some follow-up on questions from last time and getting into looking at the table of use regulations.
Okay, great. So we'll start with Kristen. Go right
All
ahead.
right. Thank you. Okay. I have so many windows open. It's gonna take me a minute to find the draft. I thought so. Okay, so since our last meeting, Martha and I had some follow-up with town council, and in addition, we had a working meeting with the staff at Merrimack Valley Planning Commission who are providing technical assistance. We talked through some of the questions that have been raised about the draft of the inclusionary zoning. Let's see, some of the comments were whether it was sort of generic and not really drafted specifically for the realities of Newbury's housing climate and housing, what we have, what we've seen, what we want to see. So we talked through that quite a bit. And following that meeting, Ian Burns and Kayla Rennie came back with a revised draft. So I thought if it works for you all, I can put the draft up. I think I shared a clean copy, thinking that would be the easiest to read in a comprehensive way. I also have a marked up draft. So I don't know if you all have a preference on which one we look at. Or I'll just go with it. Martha,
Either
what's
or.
your what's your thinking? And
Did you get the draft with Ian's notes after our discussion earlier today?
no,
Okay.
but not yet.
I think it might be easier to do the red line one because that really highlights some of the changes from the previous version.
Okay, I'll get that up. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, big enough, a little bigger, make it a little bigger. Okay, so this is structured like any bylaw. There's a lot of model bylaws. A lot of towns have had an inclusionary bylaw for longer than we have. So just to sort of say the structure of the sections of the bylaw is consistent with any inclusionary zoning bylaw that you'd get if you asked AI to give you some. So the first section is the purpose, trying to keep this as simple as possible. The purpose is to encourage the development of new housing that is affordable to low and moderate income households and to diversify the town's housing stock. When we get into the next section, the applicability, this is the section I think we had some more questions on. I recall one of the comments from the last version was just how exactly does this work? In what cases is this applicable? so we worked on clarifying that. Essentially, the way we have it structured now, anytime there's a new residential development or a net increase of dwelling units on a property. So a new residential development is this little number I, or a mixed-use development, whether in a single structure or multiple structures, that results in a net increase of 4 or more dwelling units on any parcel or contiguous parcels comprising a proposed development site. So there could be more than one parcel, but in the same ownership and part of the same proposal. We talked a little bit today about whether 4 was the right number. I think, again, in thinking about tailoring this to Newbury and what kind of opportunities we have for future development, in addition to thinking about what the planning board has seen come through. We really, primarily in recent years, we've seen small subdivisions. We've seen like the submission you all got tonight, which was for a 2-lot subdivision. There's also been a number of smaller subdivisions of 3 to 100 high, which came through a few months ago, was a 3-lot subdivision. There have been some other recent projects that were sort of 4, 5, 6, 7-lot subdivisions. So thinking about, again, really wanting this bylaw to be able to be used immediately. I think what we talked about today was whether 3 or more dwelling units might be more appropriate than 4, just to capture what we might see. I'll pause a minute. Sadie or Martha, is there anything I'm missing related to that point?
Not on the number of units, but we did talk today about potentially clarifying that it does not apply to the McMod, since that already has its own affordability. So there would be some language in there excluding that. The other question was whether, if you look at I there under A, there's reference to the OSRD, and there is an affordability incentive already built into that. So the question is, do we put that here, or do we keep it with the incentives that are in the OSRD and strike the affordability incentive from the OSRD, or keep the OSRD incentives as written, which include having more than 50% of the area be open space, and there's also an incentive for historic preservation, and strike OSRD here. So that was part of today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Just to sort of add to that, it's if we include an OSRD proposed development as a part of it here, we would have to revise the OSRD section of the bylaw. This is what Martha just said, but just to kind of think this through in my mind. I think in our discussion this morning, again, with the eye of trying to keep this as potentially simple and straightforward as possible for this year's town meeting, I think there's sort of was a feeling that perhaps we keep OSRD as it is, which has been a very effective tool for the town, particularly in terms of, preserving open space. I don't think it's very regularly been used as an incentive for affordable units, but it's sort of opens up a complicated component of how do they work together. And if we just keep the OSRD, which has been working well the way it is, this could be a new tool for a different kind of subdivision proposal. If that makes sense. So that's a question we're still talking through. moving forward in this applicability section, just clarifying the bylaw applies to all residential dwelling types, with the exception of nursing homes.
Kristen, can we go back?
Yep.
Under 2A II, a finding or special permit for the planning board that results in a net increase of 4 more dwelling units. I assume because it's later in the document, the special permit would require for off-site affordable units. Is that my understanding correct?
Sorry, ask the question again.
There's a difference between a finding and a special permit.
Yeah.
The special permit, I think one of the later sections requires a special permit for off-site affordable housing that's off-site. That's 4C2, correct?
There is a discussion later in the bylaw of a way to build the affordable units, not as a part of the subdivision you're proposing, but to build them off-site. Correct.
Which specifically requires a special permit from the planning board.
Correct.
Okay, so let's assume we're talking about on-site affordable units. I guess that can be authorized on a finding by the planning board. And what are the criteria? What findings does the planning board have to make? Is it subject to a public hearing, to notification of abutters? How does all that work?
Right. So I agree that the word finding, this isn't something we talked about today, but I also made note of that when I was reading this. So that is a question, whether that should be there. I don't think it should.
Or should any application just be subject to a special permit? I find it confusing, and I'm trying to still understand the procedure, how you get from A to B. How do you get this in front of the planning board?
Yeah,
Right.
I think, yeah. I mean, to my mind, the clearest way to do it is really if somebody is through the subdivision process. So under, subdivision rules and regs, if somebody comes in with a by right 3-lot subdivision and they say, I really like the idea of getting, an additional market rate unit, then this would be applicable. And, there's kind of a path forward, and that ties into some of the waiver language as well. And that would not be a special permit in my mind, or even a finding. It would just be part of, this would be kind of an accessory step, if I can use that word, to a subdivision process. I kind of agree with you. It's not quite so clear to me for some other kind of development that wasn't going through the subdivision process.
I mean, hypothetically, and it's maybe a stretch, but you could have someone come in with an A&R lot, which would not have to go through subdivision approval. Would this still be open to someone in that situation, to a developer in that situation?
I think the idea is that it would be development. It wouldn't be an A&R situation where somebody was developing, say, 3 separate lots. It would, again, to my mind, it would have to be a subdivision as opposed to A&Rs. So I'm not sure that directly addresses your question, but I agree there are some ambiguities here still.
Okay.
I just sort of scrolled down a little bit, skipping some sections, but I think this is the section that describes in part how it would work, which I think is one of the things we're trying to talk about. So it is a structure similar to how the open space residential development bylaw works, which is the applicant would have to come to the planning board to show a by right yield plan as Martha says, presumably for a subdivision, maximum units allowed by right on the parcel using the current dimensional regulations and subdivision regulations that we have. And then the planning board would allow an additional market rate housing unit above that maximum number that was allowed by right for every additional one affordable housing unit. So this is the description of how the affordable unit is, it's an incentive, it's not a requirement, but this is how an applicant could look at their subdivision, think about what's allowed in a conforming subdivision, and then this section sort of outlines how they would propose that in order to get an additional market rate unit, I would include an affordable unit as part of that. So it outlines this, there's some constraints, a density bonus, this section right here. Oh, I guess this pertains to the OSRD. So that is a section that potentially would be not kept if we keep this in the simpler way and just remove any reference to using this density bonus for an OSRD. But the bonus calculation, this section, affordable units are restricted to households earning at or below 60% AMI. This is an optional calculation, may be counted as 2 affordable housing units. And then this is where, again, just sort of the mechanics of this to be figured out through the planning board subdivision approval process would be to accommodating the bonus units, the planning board may reduce the minimum lot area frontage per dwelling unit required or other applicable dimensional standards in the underlying zoning district. So for instance, instead of 40,000 square feet lot area for each dwelling unit, the planning board could work with the applicant to reduce that minimum lot area to allow for the additional units.
And kind of as a sidebar to that, I don't think the language is in there now, but we did talk about including that sort of standard language saying that, all of this is subject to Title V regulations and, other applicable state regulations because, wetlands or septic systems and all of that capacity would need to be factored in.
So is town council blessed this version?
No. We just received it today yesterday when I shared it. We will be meeting with Lisa, hopefully with town council on Monday, although that's not confirmed yet, but that's my hope to review all of the remaining zoning amendment questions that the board has. So let me go back up. I know this is sort of very hard to do on Zoom and a share screen technical review. So following,
I don't object to what you're trying to do. I'm just trying to understand the process. That's all.
Yeah, your questions are good. Yeah, it's helpful. Okay, so we're up here in applicability, which is the second section of the bylaw. We had a discussion about rehab of a building or structure and also conversions of a structure. If you recall, we talked specifically about conversions applying to this. And at the moment, our recommendation and, up for discussion with any input is that it potentially not be applicable to a rehab of a building or structure that is destroyed or damaged by fire. Martha talked about how we talked about it not applying to the MICMOD, potentially not applying to a project through the open space residential subdivision. We also talked about the Plum Island Overlay District and how in general there's it's not very easy to, even if you wanted to increase building units in a multiple unit structure. There is no multifamily housing allowed on Plum Island, and there's also restrictions related to the Plum Island Overlay District. So possibly we could just name that here, that it would be excluded for these additional bonus units.
So could I ask the question? What was the thought process, Martha, for not allowing this for anything that was damaged by fire or other natural disaster?
That's actually language that Ian and Caleb put in. So I can't really address that. We did discuss it today, and kind of the thinking about putting that in there. But
I think, yeah, I don't know. Can you guys see that note that I just highlighted? I'll make it a little bigger, which I think answers your question. So I think that, in the case of fire rehab scenario, this is Ian's comment. This language is typical when IZ is required, but may not be necessary in this bylaw where it is optional and incentivized. So I think the reason many inclusionary zoning bylaws mandate the affordable unit, and that's, in that case, this section makes sense, because if you wouldn't necessarily want to require an applicant who lost their structure through fire or other disaster to be required to do something. So I think, again, this may not apply for the way our bylaw is being drafted to incentivize. We potentially would still want to incentivize. I don't know if that's the direction your question was going, Pete.
Yeah, I didn't understand the thought process.
I had the same reaction to it. I didn't get it either. Didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But
I think it makes sense. We might want to allow rebuilds to be denser than the original construction. So maybe there is no reason to exclude the option.
Right. I think I think the reason it was in there is it could be a potential, as Kristen said, if it were required, it could be a potential hardship for somebody who had lost their structure to have to rebuild it and include an affordable unit. But here, if it's an option and it actually makes the project more economically feasible somehow, then there could be a benefit.
Those are good points. The next section is definitions. These are pretty straightforward, still need to be reviewed and edited to make sure we're consistent with other definitions in our bylaw, and make sure we're covering everything relevant for this section. So number 4, this is again where the program is described. So the developer may elect to include affordable housing units as part of a project in order to qualify for density incentives outlined in the section 6. And letter B describes how the affordable units are are restricted to being affordable. Ian did want to pass along, I think there'd been a question at one of our earlier meetings about, if and when permanently deed restricted affordable units come into Newbury, as we're hoping, what's the process when they change hands? And Ian did have a conversation with the state, which clarified that once for ownership units, when someone owns the property, is living there in a deed restricted affordable unit, and they sell their property, they are required to notify the state. And then the state actually takes the role of helping the owner find a qualified new affordable unit owner, someone who qualifies for living in that affordable unit. So it's actually the state that has a much bigger role in monitoring and again, just sort of supporting the lottery or whatever the process is to find a new owner of the unit. The owner goes directly to the state, and then the state's required to notify the municipality. So the point of all this is there would not be a new bigger burden on the municipality to help with that kind of monitoring and process procedural requirements of the affordable unit. Okay, let's see. What's the next most, don't think this section we had a lot of changes to, so you've seen it before. Again, it sort of outlines the process for, as I was describing, selecting qualified home buyers through the marketing plan. Those are the pieces that are supported by the state. Letter E is related to how the affordability is determined relative to income limits, housing costs, and then the resale calculation that's included as part of the deed restriction. So once a unit is permanently deed restricted as affordable, it is retained affordable in the future. So an owner can't, sell it without that deed restriction still in place. Let's see. So no building permit shall be issued until all agreements, affordability plans, and restrictives have been approved and executed. Same certificates of occupancy. So again, this is related to the process. And then we're back in this section we looked at a little bit earlier about how the density incentive actually works. And then the last change is that we are proposing that discussion of a conversion of existing structures be saved for another time. Hopefully, if this were to move forward successfully this year and we get the sort of simple incentive structure in place, once approved by town council, once reviewed by you all and the select board and the public hearing process, if this moves forward this year, we would be in a position to next year take on some of the sort of next level of considerations that are laid out by the housing production plan, one of which is looking more closely at conversions of existing structures to encourage multifamily and to encourage affordable units. Another is, as we've talked about previously, the starter home or 40Y overlay district. The state has just come up with regulations related to right-sized homes and looking at smaller lot sizes, how to encourage single-family homes in a denser subdivision structure. there's a lot of sort of meaty discussions related to the kind of housing diversity that I think really fits what Newbury has and where Newbury might want to think about encouraging through our zoning. But I think a lot of that might take more time than we have for this year. So I will stop sharing so we can all see each other for a minute. I'm happy to bring up anything if anyone has specific questions about the language.
Kristen, as I listened to your presentation, I found myself thinking about how the language contains so many generic things that were not necessarily specific to Newbury. I know Martha mentioned earlier how, yeah, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to meet Title V and, water and sewer requirements. And I was thinking, well, that'd be true, but if you think about that up front, there's not going to be that much of Newbury that's really eligible for this inclusionary dense zoning. And I'm wondering whether we need to think about language that matches the reality of Newbury. I'm thinking about where bedrock outcrops might be, or where we already know from soil maps that it's not likely that you can put in a septic system, which then leaves you with thinking about is there any new technology out there that can handle the load from a proposed development? So I just have a certain lack of understanding, which makes me a bit skeptical about generic language, from the state in particular, which doesn't have an understanding about the site-specific nature of that we have to deal with in Newbury. Sorry, I'm not bringing it to a logical conclusion, but that's what I'm, concerned about when I hear the language being presented.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to put Scott on the spot and say what his perspective as a developer about this, but he can pass too.
Well, I just want to pass like Drake May on Sunday. So I have to tell you, we're very heavy into AI right now. That is solving a lot of the generic, I guess, generic concerns, generic, answers to the questions, generic, the state versus the town, and then internally, with a lot of our process. So I'm an old salt. Some have called me a little long in the tooth, so to speak. So I'm a little, I just can't get my arms around it. But there's a lot of folks. We have a department internally that is working around the clock, and the improvements and the efficiencies that they've gained as just creating this just meshing of what needs to happen. So that's all I can tell you, Steve. But I do appreciate the comment, because I do think there's something out there. It's really, really tough. And between Martha, Kristen, and Sadie, what you're having to really deal with, it's not easy. I'm glad that I'm not in your shoes.
And I think one thing I'd say to this is, I don't really see it. And again, I've sort of got my head stuck on this as a subdivision process. That's the easiest way for me to think about it. But, it's not so different from, subdivision. Somebody comes in and they say, I can do 4 lots by right. They're going to have to prove that they have the water. They get certificate from a well driller. They have to prove that they've got the septic systems. If it's an OSRD, they can get a density bonus already if they have 50%, more than 50% of the open space set aside. So, I think the parameters are already there in the process. It'll be very site specific for each one. And it is now, so I don't really see that it's that much different. I don't know if I'm stating that clearly, but.
No, I think you're stating it clearly, and I do think you're right. But I do think just my response to Steve, future state, and hopefully it's not too future, that we'll be able to see maybe search for progressive communities, in the U.S. And let's just say it's Manitoba, Minnesota, that's incorporating new subdivision conditions or amendment, whatever it is, that we'll be able to, it's going to be real time. You're going to be able to see and say, that makes a lot of sense, and it just really simplifies things. And you can put a lot of it in the same bucket. We're, I think, yards away from that. But to your point, Martha, I agree with you.
I think when I dive into this and trying to understand it, I use projects we're either seeing or have recently seen. The board, you've all been working, and some of you for several terms of being on the planning board and seeing, a number of the different kinds of subdivisions that have come through, and just sort of trying to imagine how they could have been different. I think what's behind this bylaw is multiple conversations with developers, both Martha over the years. I've talked with folks just in the recent, 6 months of drafting this, and MVPC has also reached out to several, multiple developers who are doing small projects, the kind that Newbury might see. So what would be a tool that actually works for you to encourage potentially denser development, although we still have constraints and barriers, primarily septic, which we know, but encouraging a way that makes it economically feasible to pull in these affordable units. Like, just think of any one of the projects we've been looking at recently. How, we heard tonight, well, the soils are great there. Well, instead of just two homes, what could we imagine being there? Anyway, it's a philosophical comment, I guess, but that's what helps to me, is actually make it specific to what we've been seeing in Newbury and see if it would work. Okay, that is inclusionary unless there are other questions, and we want to have a few more minutes on some of the other zoning amendments.
Yep, I'm good myself. Everyone else, I haven't heard anything, so switch gears to Martha.
All right. So I wanted to go back to a couple things that were raised in the last meeting and previous discussions. And I'll see if I can share my screen here. So are you all able to see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this ties into, sorry, the dog is barking. So we had language proposed, and I'll see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Language proposed by town council regarding lots in two zoning districts. And the language that was originally proposed had to do with in the less restricted district and the more restricted district, and extending the less restricted district could extend into the more restrictive district. Anyway, it's very, as you can tell, it's very confusing language. We had a discussion with our building commissioner and town council, and his practice has been to say that a district which is split, or a lot that's split between two districts, whichever district covers more of the lot is the one that kind of prevails over the entire lot. So this is the proposed language for that. We're still waiting to get confirmation from him that this is, in fact, reflects what he's doing and reflects our conversation, and also from town council. But it ties into the conversation that we had the last time about, our initial thought to change some of the district boundaries so that they were coterminous with parcel boundaries. And we didn't have many lots that are actually lying in two districts. One was, 17 Central, which has the Ale Prime gas station. One was the Commercial Highway A, where 12 Kent Way is located, and the other was Parker River Marine. So, I guess the question to the board is, given this interpretation, in a sense, it's kind of a moot point. For example, 17 Central Street, the larger area of that lot lies in the Commercial Highway District. So under Peter's interpretation or practice, Commercial Highway would apply to the entire district. So
The entire lot, you mean?
the entire lot.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was a
No,
question I
please.
had, was whether or not the L Prime lot had more commercial square footage or more reg square footage.
Yeah,
You just
it's more
mentioned it.
commercial. It's about, I think it's 60,000 some odd square feet versus 33,000 something.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
So Martha, if I may, so AL Prime, as we know, has frontage on Central Street.
Yes.
And it's bounded on three sides by residential uses,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Does this mean, under this interpretation, that they could put in a body shop behind the existing gas station, or a car wash, or a service bay?
If it was an extension of the existing use, kind of accessory, I would say probably so.
That's
There's
not
kind
a
of
comforting thought, frankly.
and there's kind of a corollary question, which I put out to town council, which is currently, if you have a lot which is split between two districts, and the front of the lot is commercial and the rear of the lot is residential, you can't go through a commercial district to access residential. So under Peter's interpretation, does that become moot also? So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a good point. Go ahead.
No, so what you're saying, Martha, is the residential ag on L Prime automatically can be commercial? Is that, I just looking for a clarification.
yeah, I mean
Basically,
that's,
the whole lot becomes commercial.
yes,
Yeah.
under our building commissioner's current practice.
So,
And which is memorialized in this language.
That's right. That's right.
That's how I see it, and it, I think it's a fine interpretation, but it does restrict really any opportunity for any type of residential housing, like in the future, actually forever.
Right. Well, if I may interrupt, if it stayed the way it is right now, and say an abutter were to buy that residentially zoned portion of the lot, and you could access it through, what is already residentially zoned, you could have residential development back there. if the lot just, stays exactly as it is. Again, our building commissioner's interpretation is that the entire lot could be used for commercial. So I guess it gets into the question of whether, would it be appropriate to move forward at this time to, change the district boundaries so that the whole thing is in the commercial highway, or we leave it as it is for right now?
I have another question, Martha. The term existing lot, does that mean existing at the time that the bylaw is adopted, or existing at the time that you apply for a building permit?
Yeah, I guess that's a very good question. I guess I would interpret it to be that it's the lot that's existing when the building permit is.
So
being sought.
one could manipulate lot lines in order to transform a residential district into a commercial district. I mean, lot lines change all the time, as we know.
Yes, yes.
And frankly, I find it a little unsettling that someone, a member of the public should be able to look at a zoning map and understand what the uses are for, within that zoning district, and not have to go back and research every lot that might lie in two districts. I don't know.
So just sorry to interrupt, Larry, but for clarification and a comment as well. So L prime is a good example of the conversation we're having here. The front's commercial, the back's residential. The commercial supersedes in the building inspector's interpretation. So the whole lot could be used for commercial. Now, in the understanding that if we were to entertain a lot line change in the future, you could add a house lot there. But with the way it's set up now, on revenue for the town perspective, if we were to go forth with what you have mapped out, changing that whole, cleaning the lot lines up so it's lot line specific and the whole lot was commercial, if in the event something was to go up in that unused space at L prime now, wouldn't it create more revenue for the town tax wise than a house lot as zoned res ag with a lot line change? Does that question make sense?
That's a good question.
Because if it was to expand and you had a McDonald's drive-through in the back there and it was all went through planning and whatever it needed to come to fruition, wouldn't that be more revenue for the town than to be used as a house lot?
Yeah, but I think it's a great question, but you also need to look at the likelihood of a McDonald's drive-through back there, right? So as is, I think you need to look at the tax revenue for the town today. But if you're going to look at the opportunity in the future for, let's say, what is the area right now? Just using this lot as an example, that's zoned residential.
The portion of the lot that's residential right now, I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it might be about 33,000 square feet.
So and how many lots does it abut? Let's just call it hypothetically, it abuts 3 lots and it has 33,000 square feet. I guess hypothetically, you could look at it if it was zone residential, that there would be an opportunity for 3 abutting lots to purchase, a third of the available residentially zoned land as is, or by right, and then ultimately do an ADU on each one of those lots that would ultimately increase the overall valuation of each lot for tax purposes. So, I mean, it's a little, and maybe we're just spending too much time on this, but I don't want to, or at least don't think we should hamstring any opportunity in the future for housing, especially affordable housing. So just my thoughts, like I'm a little agnostic, but I know we spoke about this a bit, not ad nauseum, but we did speak much about this, especially this particular lot last go around.
Right. And I guess, I don't know the answer to that question. I suppose one could also say if there's an expanded commercial use on it, I don't think, my interpretation of the zoning is currently we don't allow, two principal structures on one lot. So whatever went onto that lot, if the gas station is still the primary use, would have to be accessory to that. So it wouldn't be the gas station in front and say a McDonald's drive-through in the back. It could be something that was connected with the gas station. And as far as revenue is concerned, if there were expanded commercial use on that lot, that might be equally beneficial in terms of tax revenues. It doesn't address housing issues, but so I can't address the tax question.
Yeah. No, it was just a thought that crossed my mind. And
right
after what you just said, is there road frontage there for that lot to be divided down the middle from front to back? So
yeah, I don't think there's enough frontage for it to be divided.
Okay.
That way.
But it was just a thought that came to mind because you said you can't cross commercial to get to residential, so you couldn't put a driveway with the 53 feet, and you know what I mean? So.
Right. Yeah, the only way it could, as it's currently zoned, the only way it could be used for residential really would be to have it be acquired by one of the abutters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to Scott's points, I understand where you're coming from too. So it was just something that crossed my mind if it's the majority of it's commercial and it's considered commercial and the building inspector's interpretation, wouldn't it make sense to go forth with what you had proposed originally a few weeks ago? So.
Right. So that's really, the question really is twofold. Assuming we get confirmation from the building commissioner that this is consistent with what we discussed. Is the board okay with its language? And second, how does this affect the decision on whether to rezone the 17 Central Street parcel?
Because if you change the zoning, if anyone wants to let's just say they want to do what I said, 3 abutters, 3 ADUs, and they wanted to purchase the land, then it would have to go back. It would actually have to go to town meeting for a zoning change, right?
Yeah, it would have to, if it were officially rezoned now so that the entire parcel is clearly in commercial highway and somebody wanted to buy a portion of it for residential, then it would have to get rezoned at town meeting.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily. As long as it depends on whether or not you're going to build on it. If you're just adding to the back of your lot, then
well,
but
yeah, and then I guess I would carry it a little further. If you're adding to the back of your lot and it now becomes a lot that is primarily residential, according to the building commissioner's interpretation, it becomes residential. So,
but I don't imagine Peter's interpretation has ever been challenged in court, has it?
I have not heard of any challenges.
So, it stands, it would be subject to a court challenge. If we amend the bylaw, then maybe not.
Right. I mean, right now our bylaw is silent on lots in 2 districts. So the effort was to get some language in there. His practice is different from the language that was suggested. So.
And the other thought too is that what's the life of the gas tanks there? They were replaced in the 90s at some point. I don't know what the lifespan of the tanks in the ground are, and the L Prime could come or they're leasing, the landowners could come to a spot in the road where the tanks have met their age and they have new plans for the whole lot. So, I mean, anything could happen, I guess.
Yeah, but I've seen what I've seen in the past is if it's a lucrative, venture by Prime, I mean, there's tank replacements and they just do it all over again for another 30 years. So I don't know. This is a tough one.
Yep, I agree.
So, the material is there. If the board feels that it's appropriate to move forward with it, to change the zoning for the whole lot, we can do that, or we can just let it sit for now. And then I guess that also goes on to, the other 2 districts that we looked at last time. They're a little less clear cut than this because they're made up of a number of different parcels.
You're talking on the other side of the street?
Yeah, we're talking where 12 Kent Way is.
Yep.
And then also the Parker River Marine District. And we also did get an answer for town council to the question that Scott asked about the docks. So if we were to reduce the Parker River Marine District so that it's those 3 parcels that we talked about last time, but the docks are extended beyond that, it's not the zoning, the land use district, it's actually an ownership question. Because they're then going in front of parcels that are owned by other people. So presumably there would be an agreement in place for the marina to have those docks in front of parcels that are owned by other people. But it doesn't, the zoning, if we take the Parker River Marine zoning away from those abutting parcels, that doesn't make any difference.
Don't some of those docks already in front of parcels owned by other people?
Yes. Yeah, so that's why I said presumably there are some agreements already for that to be happening.
That, I look at that as it's in a waterway, and the waterway has nothing to do with the river frontage, but maybe I'm not looking at it the right way either, so. Well, obviously, there was permission for the docks to exist there now, so.
Well, presumably, does that mean we're near certain that there are agreements in place?
That we don't know, but we're talking about the zoning question. Does it make sense to change the district boundaries, and that does not impact the docks one way or the other.
Agreed.
From what council said.
It's really not our business.
So I guess again, based on this interpretation of lots that are split.
You said Lisa Mead came up with this language.
She didn't come up with this language, but it came out of the discussion that Lisa and the building commissioner and Kristen and Sadie and I had. And we're just waiting to get confirmation from him that this, in fact, does actually accurately represent his practice.
So I guess my last question would be, if we were just looking at Central Street and Prime, what do we if we change it, I guess what are we solving for? Versus just keeping it as is. I know it would clean things up. But ultimately, do we want to see less flexibility? I think going forward with use.
Well, there is another option too, Martha. Isn't there an option to pull the shaded, so to speak, areas of the commercial to the side boundaries and leave the back alone? Leave the back in ag reg?
There's so little of the commercial in the abutting properties. It almost feels to me like if you either leave it all or you change it all.
Change it all, okay.
I'm inclined to think that we leave Central Street alone, Prime alone. The others, I don't have a problem with, but
I would agree with that statement.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. So we'll leave 17 Central as is, but move forward with a proposal to change the boundaries, zoning boundaries on the other two that we talked about.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
That's fine with me, Larry and Scott, I believe, Pete and Steve.
I'm on board as well, guys. I've been silent for this conversation. It's been nice.
Okay.
I think Martha wished my flight was delayed. I'm sorry for
No, it's
No, I'm good with it too.
very good. It's a
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, that's it. If anything changes when we hear back from the building commissioner with this interpretation, we'll talk about it on the 4th, but we'll proceed on that basis.
All right, thank you, Martha.
We have to vote on these on the 4th. By the 4th.
Yes, yeah, we'll have to vote to recommend to the select board any proposed zoning amendments.
I don't have my schedule handy, but yes.
Yeah, because ideally they'll bring, oops, it's not the one I want.
Do you want to go over the schedule again? Is that the question, or? Yes, we need to vote on February 4th, and then the select board would, their meeting is February 10th, where they would refer the amendments back to the planning board for the public hearing.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
There's another, it's kind of a minor change, and I thought I had it ready to share, but I seem not to, I'm afraid, which was just in Article 3, and this leads into the discussion about the table of use regulations. There's a lot of redundancy in the body of Article 3 references to the table of use regulations. So in our last discussion with town council, we've just cleaned that up and sort of combined sort of the end of that article with some language in the beginning of the article. I think it was in the materials that Kristen sent out, and unfortunately, I just don't seem to have it here. So it's more sort of administrative. We originally had a direct reference to the table of use regulations at the end of that article because the original intention was that the table be within the body of that. When General Code did it, they pulled it out as an attachment. So it's just kind of cleaning up those references. And oops, that's the wrong thing. Sorry. All right. So then the last thing I wanted to go over was the changes to the table of use regulations. And some of it is purely administrative, like changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Our acronym, if I can call it that, for the residential agriculture has always been RAG, but we've verbally called it the agricultural residential, so it just seems to make sense to flip those to be consistent. One of the biggest changes is there was a holdover from a much older version of the zoning that had designated the select board as a special permit granting authority for certain uses, particularly in the residential agricultural district and the residential limited business district and some other ones. So the suggestion sort of universally is to change that to either the planning board or the ZBA. In looking at other towns' bylaws, I think I found only one example in which the select board was actually a special permit granting authority. I'm going to scroll down for a second. There were some that I think we originally kept as being select board because they might have some town-wide implications, in particular having to do with, see if I can find it. I've probably missed it. Electric distribution, and also the water supply protection overlay district. The electric distribution, and discussing that with town council, the thought was that the select board would actually be granting other kinds of permits or entering into agreements with, say, the electric company, and that we're really talking about land use permits. And so we came down to feeling that even for something like that, it was more appropriate for the planning board to be the special permit granting authority than the select board. Again, there were holdovers. They were the special permit granting authority for indoor and outdoor recreation facilities. That was a holdover from the old zoning. And at the risk of making you all dizzy, I'm going to go back up to the top. So there's some other things that I'm suggesting that we add. Originally, I was thinking that it might make sense to put in columns for uses allowed and not allowed in all of the overlay districts, but that becomes very cumbersome. And I looked at some other communities that do that, and it makes it very difficult to kind of sort through all of that. So my suggestion here is to add a note below, and we discussed this briefly last time, to really call out the fact that the overlay districts, people should look at the particular regulations for the overlay districts and what's allowed and what's not allowed in each of those, instead of trying to call it out in separate columns. I added a note here for mixed-use structures. We have a definition of mixed-use structures, but there's also language in the zoning which specifically says that if you have a mixed-use structure, each of those uses has to be allowed within the district that the mixed-use structure is proposed for. So I added a footnote on that. Again, going down, this is all changing select board to planning board for the special permits. We did have a couple of cases where uses were permitted that it really seems like it might be more appropriate to require special permits in certain districts, such as membership clubs in the Byfield Village District and the Parker River Marine District, which are smaller. we had talked in a separate kind of working group about, we were permitting the museums in the limited, or the light industrial biofuel district, which is actually where Jean-Paul Beck is doing his prototyping. And we discussed that with Lisa. You know, the feeling was that he might want people to be able to come in and see these prototypes that he's creating. But her opinion was that that's, you know, that's an accessory use to what he's doing. So given that particular lot configuration, it makes more sense not to allow an actual separate museum there, anything that he wanted to do. So that was changed to not permitted. A couple of changes, changed the language on medical marijuana treatment centers. This was not changed when we combined the medical marijuana and adult use marijuana last year. And this change should have also been made, so it's not permitted in the commercial highway district for either the retail or medical marijuana because they were combined. Again, the change from select board to planning board for those uses. I had raised a question here. I think funeral homes or mortuaries are not allowed in the water supply protection overlay district. So my initial thought was maybe we should call that out, but I think that gets addressed by adding the footnote further down. We talked about breaking the cemeteries into one category for private, which would actually still be planning select board issuing the special permit, and having municipal cemeteries, which would just be a permitted use subject to site plan review. Non-retail bakery, it was not permitted in the commercial highway and commercial highway A, but it seems like those could be appropriate uses, so maybe changing those to special permit makes some sense. I think this was actually, these were reversed. Food processing and distribution was allowed in the Parker River Marine by special permit, but seafood processing and distribution was not. So I think it was actually supposed to be the opposite, that seafood processing and distribution would be allowed by special permit. This is the electric power item that I was talking about before. So that's a change from select board to planning board. The next highlighted ones here all have to do with the new clean energy facilities bylaw that includes wind and solar and battery energy storage. And the thought right now is we currently have small wind allowed throughout the town. Small scale ground mounted is permitted. Medium scale would be permitted in a portion of the commercial highway district along Scotland Road, or the portion that's along Scotland Road, the northeast, where it intersects with I-95, and also in the business and light industrial district, but requires special permit elsewhere. Large scale, the same thing. Tier 1, so the very small battery energy storage systems would be permitted throughout the town, but Tier 2 and Tier 3 would be permitted by right, again, subject to site plan review in business and light industrial and that same area of the commercial highway on Scotland Road adjacent to east of 95. The other discussion we had was regarding outdoor storage, which we currently have defined as open storage. So town council recommended that we kind of clarify that. So we changed open to outdoor. And the discussion we had was actually to not allow it anywhere in town and this should actually be principal use, not primary use. Currently, it's allowed by special permit in the business and light industrial district along Route 1. But to allow it by special permit where it's an ancillary use to the primary or principal use in commercial highway and business and light industrial. And I'll get to a revised definition of those two things in a second. Going down, the way this item was written, the any other passenger transportation services was a little ambiguous, so we're proposing to change that to similar. The one below kind of makes it sound like it doesn't allow vans or limousines or ambulance service throughout the town, but it was really intended to be the offices or headquarters for those uses. We discussed changing greenhouses in the park or agricultural farm stands to permitted instead of not permitted in the Parker River Marine District. We had hotels, and I'm sorry, I forgot to highlight this. We had hotels and motels as permitted in commercial highway A, and business and light industrial, but in thinking about it further, it seems that having those allowed by special permit is a little bit more appropriate. This is something that we've kind of goes back to the discussion that we were having about conversions in with regard to the inclusionary zoning bylaw. We've been talking for a while about trying to find some way to allow these conversions of single-family homes into more, several units. Currently, we don't allow any multifamily dwellings of 5 units or more in town. It's not permitted across the board, with the exception of the McMod, which is an overlay district. So kind of raising as a question whether this might be a place where we could allow that as a conversion, state that it's a conversion of, say, single or 2-family structures into multifamily by special permit, up to 6 units or something. And I'm just throwing that out as something for possible discussion. And I'll come back to that. There are only a few more here. We needed to update the change from accessory apartment to dwelling unit to be consistent with the ADU bylaw changes from last year. Bed and breakfast established. The select board is currently the special permit granting authority. So the thought here would be to have the ZBA be the special permit granting authority for that. Some clarifications to notes down here. Just clarifying the section to go to for district-specific applicable regulations. So that's more just kind of wordsmithing, not a change. We needed to add the MBTA communities multifamily to the overlay districts list. This is making the changes to the medical marijuana and treatment centers, adding that to this. Note 6 is clarifying, and we do this also for for the marijuana uses, clarifying that it's allowed in only a portion of the commercial highway district by right. The next note is tier 1 or tier 2 and tier 3 battery storage, the same things. And then note 8 is the added note about the mixed use structures. So that's it for the table of use regulations. So I know it's a lot here. So if there are any questions or comments or anything you want to talk about.
So Martha, would you go up to that one with the 5 units or the 6 units that's not allowed anywhere in town?
Right here. Yeah.
Yeah. What are people's thoughts about that? are we too tired, folks?
I was wondering if it affected the inclusionary, anything inclusionary that we have, if there's two jive together, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't, if we do this to the table of use regulations or make this change, it doesn't really include an affordability unit or affordability component.
But we can't have it not permitted if we're trying to encourage and incentivize.
You know, and again, this goes back to inquiries that we've had from developers in the past who have been interested in converting, you know, some larger homes into, say, 3 or 4 units, or actually, or 5.
And that would be permitted under the draft inclusionary bylaw?
I'm sort of trying to, and we took the conversion language out of the current draft of the inclusionary zoning bylaw. So I'm really thinking about this as not necessarily, it's a way to create more housing, but not necessarily, you know, with an affordable unit.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought you said you had taken that out.
So I this has not been on my radar, this section of the table. And I mean, so
Yeah, and
someone proposing a MICMOD development currently can't have one of the structures have 5 or more units?
Well, the MICMOD is separate. That's the, you know, that's the overlay district. So they, you know, they could do that as long as we haven't excluded that in the MICMOD, which we haven't. So this is just under the base zoning, not the overlay district.
Right. So maybe we need some kind of note related to this.
Well, I think it would go back to the, you know, the note that I added here referring to 3 below, which goes to, you know, all the overlay districts. And again, you know, I sort of apologize. We haven't, you know, we've been thinking about this for a while, but we haven't really talked about it. And I thought we might as well have that discussion and see if it's something that we feel could move forward at this point, or we can just leave it the way it is right now.
Well, I
So
don't.
you're proposing, oh, sorry, Larry, go ahead.
No, I think it needs more thought and more discussion. I don't know about going forward with it now. I mean, you wouldn't want to permit it in every zoning district.
No, I'm thinking mostly of the residential agricultural district, actually, and maybe in the Byfield Village district. But yeah, it would not be in every district.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly worthy of discussion. I'm not sure at this late hour. In terms of by late, I don't mean that it's 9:19 tonight. I mean that it's with this far along in the
Right.
process of presenting this to the select board, because that may get a lot of attention.
And it could, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, it's just been sort of in the back of our minds for quite some time. So I thought, you know, we could raise the question and say, yeah, let's explore it or not. But you're absolutely right. We're at the 11th hour on all of this stuff. So maybe that gets saved for another time, you know, along with the idea about conversions and an affordability component as well.
Yeah, Martha, which brings to mind another thought. Is it the intention to submit the table of use regulations as a separate article? I know we did speak about this at one of our meetings. And my follow-up question is, if so, well, if any of these other anticipated warrant articles fail, is that going to create an inconsistency between the table of use regulations and the other, and the main bylaw, if you will?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I've been thinking about this. I mean, in some ways, I think it might need, and it's all this energy stuff. So it might make sense to have that be a separate article. So that would include removing existing language and pulling it into the clean energy article, which becomes our new Article 11. And as part of that, along with the revised solar and the battery energy storage language, and as part of that, a component of that warrant article would be these, these things here. Because if that article fails, these things are kind of moot. I think. So the rest of the table could potentially go as, we've talked about bundling sort of the more administrative changes into one article, and that could include changes to this table. But there are some that are substantive as well, like changing the special permit granting authority. So I'd welcome any thoughts on how best to deal with this. But I do think that all of this, clean energy stuff should probably be dealt with separately as part of that clean energy article.
That makes sense to me. I mean, there may be some way to structure it that, if it were included in the warrant article that includes the table, there might be some language town council could give us to say this won't be included if, Article 4 doesn't pass or whatever. But
right.
But I like your approach of just including it all together for the clean energy stuff.
And it is a little tricky because there's some things that are, clearly housekeeping and cleanup, and we want to make sure that those do get voted up. There are other things that, I can imagine there might be some concerns or questions about some of the other proposed changes. So, but is there anything specific that you would like to kind of revisit or talk about on the table?
I don't have anything, Martha.
No, I mean,
Okay.
you've obviously put a lot of time and thought into it.
But, there are certainly different ways about, thinking about some of these things. So, but if there's nothing now, then maybe I'll go on to the last thing, which is the outdoor storage item that I mentioned a little while ago. So shall I take this down?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So are you all able to see this?
Yes.
Okay. So our current definition of sort of open storage of materials is somewhat limited. So again, it was suggested for that it should refer to a time period. So anything that's being stored for more than a 24-hour period of time. And so it's been changed to the keeping in an unenclosed area of any goods, junk, raw material, supplies, equipment, merchandise, vehicles, or the like in the same place for more than a 24-hour period. Does not include storage of small quantities of materials incidental to other permitted uses, such as contractor's yard. We had kind of a conflicting, or it was kind of a confusing, we also then had a definition of open storage of raw materials. So it was suggested that we should actually have a definition of raw materials. So I just changed this to raw materials instead of open storage of raw materials. And I'm suggesting striking out the reference to mining operations because we don't actually allow mining operations in town. So raw materials would include things such as stone, crushed stone, gravel, sand, mulch, and loam. So these two definitions kind of go together. Right now, they're a little bit confusing because they're, both talking about open storage.
So did you want to have a definition on the quantity as well?
It's a good question. I looked at a bunch of definitions, and there are some towns that have definitions, like bulk storage of these kinds of materials. But I didn't really see anything that necessarily limits it to a certain amount. So any suggestions on how to clarify or write that would be most welcome.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but if you were to just look at an example of, say, the contractor behind the public storage, near the dump, a contractor like that could store, I would say in that back lot near the border, potentially, a 40-foot high cone-shaped quantity of loam or topsoil. That could be several hundred yards, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 yards of cubic yards of material. And I don't know, I mean, it is probably the right spot if you're going to store anything, because there's not a lot of residential. But it does beg the question, what is acceptable?
Right.
What's the acceptable quantity? Is a few small piles of gravel or topsoil, or that contractor may come back and say, if we challenged them and said, hey, that's not the right quantity, and they may say, well, it's a small quantity for me, right? And so unless you can measure something, I don't think you can hold anybody's really feet to the fire on a requirement. So I don't have an answer for you. I'm just saying I think, again, it's something, and I don't want to prolong the meeting, but it is something that we should at least have something in there that we could measure.
Right, because it really, I think what you're saying kind of goes to this sentence here. This does not include storage of small quantities of materials incidental to other permitted uses, such as a contractor's yard. So, what is considered small?
Yeah.
Well, this is just the definition section. Presumably, you would look elsewhere for the limitations on what you can keep as outdoor storage or raw materials.
Right, and that's exactly, some communities do have a whole section in their bylaw on what they call bulk storage or related things about, you know, I think quantities and screening and all kinds of things like that that regulate that, that we just don't have right now.
Because I mean, all this is doing is just defining these terms. It's not prohibiting anything.
Right, it's, I mean, it's trying to is trying to clarify the definitions that we have right now, because we actually have in the table of use regulations, we have 3 references to what we're calling open storage. And, you know, it was kind of confusing and ambiguous. So this is an attempt to sort that out.
So it's in the table of use regulations that you would find the limitations on these things.
Yeah, although it doesn't, you know, that doesn't really reference quantities either. And there's kind of a blanket one saying open storage, which we're changing outdoor storage, you know, if not noted elsewhere. So,
So I think what you're saying, Larry, would be, or Martha's saying, we don't have that, and it's a task for another day.
at this point, it is probably a task for another day. So, you know, it'd probably be helpful to have that. You know,
But for the definition, this probably works.
but, you know, and you know, the one suggestion I made in the table is to not allow this kind of outdoor storage as a primary use any place. It really needs to be associated with, say, a site contractor's headquarters or something like that. You know, it's just not a great land use. But I guess, you know, given the hour and everything, maybe if you all have time to really go through the suggested changes in the table, and we could follow up with a discussion next time. And what goes to the select board doesn't have to be the absolute final draft. That needs to be in place by the time the first notice of the public hearing is published. So there's a little bit more time, not a lot, to kind of refine this stuff.
Yeah.
Martha, if I may make a comment about recharge areas.
Okay.
I recommend saying that the transmitted to groundwater, not aquifers. Aquifers have a particular definition from my world about yada, 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 yielding a useful quantity of water. So you could be contaminating groundwater, even though it's not an aquifer per se.
Yeah, good point. I'll make a note of that.
That's good. Groundwater is 2 words too. Another age-old debate in the geologic community.
Yeah, it's like stormwater, 1 word or 2.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. So I will take this down unless there's anything else. So I think, as we discussed before, a lot of the definitions, like the ones that have been, this is only an excerpt, but, you know, ones that are crossed out are for the most part ones that are being relocated to other places, the related bylaw within the body of the zoning bylaw. So that was what I had for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
Great work, Martha.
Thank you.
And we'll pick it up on January 4th, right? I mean, February 4th.
We'll turn back. I wish we could turn it back.
All right, Woody, we're all done with that. That was a couple weeks ago.
All right. Anything else, Martha, before we?
No, that was everything from me. Kristen, or Sadie, did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that was great. I really appreciate you've done a lot of research behind the scenes to propose those modifications. Yeah, I think we will have a big week ahead of us next week to kind of get a lot of this in final shape, so you all have a chance to, dive in again before our next meeting in a couple weeks.
Very good. Do we want to go right into your plans report, please, Kristen?
Oh my gosh. I forgot. Oh boy, I had a big list too, but it's so late. No, I guess I'll just keep it short. I will mention let's see, Sadie and I have both done CPTC trainings this month. I don't know if you want to say one sentence about yours, Sadie.
That was about adopting and revising rules and regulations for planning boards. I didn't get my degree in planning, so I
Didn't
just
hear you, Sadie.
Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry. Adopting and revising rules and regulations of planning boards was the title of my module. It was really interesting. So
there's a lot of detail in the difference between bylaws and regulations, and it's, a constant learning exercise to sort through it all. So super helpful. I did one about some community outreach ways to engage and incentivize people in projects, things like that. It was actually moderated by Gerard Witten, who's our local Newbury resident and director at MVPC, and that was a great workshop as well. The annual citizen planner training conference is coming up in March, so I do want to always encourage people to attend that. It's in Worcester on March 21st. I guess the only other thing is we do have a lot of other sort of municipal project work going on. We worked with Mason to apply for a Municipal Vulnerability 2.0 grant. We're expecting to hear about that this month. Sadie, in particular, is helping work on a funding grant proposal for design work for the Boston Road Route 1 intersection, working with DPW and the support of Merrimack Valley Planning Commission for improvements at that intersection, which has been on the master plan for a long time. So that's a grant proposal that's due the beginning of February. And we're also there's a lot of stuff going on with Border to Boston Trail. We are probably going to be submitting a DCR recreational trails grant, which is an annual funding, state funding, federal highway transportation money through the state to support municipal trail projects. And that's also due the first week of February. And we are getting very close to contracting for the federal appropriation funding for the Byfield to Newburyport feasibility for the Border to Boston Trail, which is sort of going to be the first public process related to that segment of the Border to Boston Trail. So we do have a lot of other stuff going on. This is the big push for zoning, and we really appreciate everybody helping us with this work right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
How about the federal access grant? There was going to be a January 12th meeting, as I recall.
The public meeting has been postponed. We've had a meeting last Wednesday, and this Wednesday the project team is deep in the engineering for that. But we are, and so that was postponed, but is aimed for March. So we don't have a date yet.
Okay. I'm intrigued by saying that the team is deep into engineering for something that hasn't been brought before the public, and the public may be saying no to so much of it to begin with. And could spend a lot of money on engineering for something that hasn't been even revealed as possibilities after the.
Well, there are
public
three
meeting.
concepts that are being considered. The feasibility is, that is the scope of work is 25% design plans for three concepts to bring to the planning board, to the public. So I'm happy to share the scope of work for that project, which might help, or maybe we can spend a little more time giving some detail on that. I'm happy
Again,
to
I think that
explain
would
that
be-
further.
I think that would be useful. Again, I'm reminded of an old college prof of mine that made the point about how a steamroller moves very slowly downhill, but you want to get in front of it at the top of the hill, not at the bottom. And this project bears all the signs of a steamroller that's already underway down the hill, and that concerns me. Again, coming back to what the comments have been put forth about the quote, no action alternative. And I'll be quite disappointed, speaking as a member of the planning board and for myself, if the no action alternative isn't fully vetted as well. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I mean, the project is a feasibility study to improve public safety in terms of access to the island in the face of current flooding and future flooding. So it is a public safety project looking at what is feasible with the fact that we only have one way on and off the island, and we want to make that a safe, as safe as possible for the users, both currently and the future. So in terms of, I mean, I think you're bringing up really good points, Steve, in terms of, we need to know there's a certain amount of engineering and analysis that needs to get done in order to know what is feasible, and permitting is a big piece of that. But, design is also a component of that. So I think the public meeting we had in the summer, early summer, a while ago now, but all of that input in terms of ideas about future use of the turnpike is incorporated into the process, but there's also just a more technical piece of it. So
right, but I heard people doing more about this is what they'd like to have for access, as opposed to focusing on how access would be achieved. And there's a difference between the two. And now, as I'm sure Pete well knows on his frequent trips to the island, you've got a sign up there that says, turn around if it's, don't drown. And you're raising the specter of people drowning as they drive down a turnpike which has some water on it. And I see that and I shake my head about some of the thought process that's going on, building up a big fear factor. But anyway, again, I can think of more than three items that people at the public hearing raised as things they'd like to have, which again, weren't necessarily part of thinking about how we're going to do this. Anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry. I get a bit wound up about that. But again, for the lack of information that's being brought forth to the public. I think something's missing there. And it's not all on the Newbury Planning Department by any stretch.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to say it's not on the Newbury Planning Department. And I do appreciate the concern there, especially you being a Plum Island resident. So I'm not lost on that, but I'm not sure if this is the right forum.
Yeah.
Okay. With that said, I have no further comments this evening. If no one else has any further comments this evening, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Do I have a second?
You.
Thank you, Pete. And a roll call vote. Pete, Larry, Scott, Steve,
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
have a good night, everyone, and thank you so
Oh,
much.
good
Thank you,
night.
Martha.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you,
folks.
everyone.
Martha,
Appreciate
great
it.
work. Thank you.